Hello, friends, and welcome back to my series on the Naassenes. These were a group of early Christians who were named after Naas, the snake. And in light of my forthcoming book, I'd like to drill down a bit on some special topics in Nicene Christian studies. One of the most fascinating parts of Nicene theology was that they viewed the Phrygian god Attis as a manifestation of Jesus. And it's important to understand why. In short, there's an allegorical interpretation of Attis that precedes the Nicene identification of Attis and Jesus. And when we understand that allegorical interpretation, we understand the key for the Nicene identification of Attis and Jesus. The text in the Nicene Discourse that we'll be looking at today comes from the Refutation of All Heresies 5.7.13. Quote, "But if the mother of the gods castrates Attis, though still possessing him as her beloved, the blessed higher nature of the supercosmic beings calls up the male power of the soul to itself." Unquote. Now, without some knowledge or background knowledge of the myth of Attis, we're unable to understand what's going on in this passage. So, for those of you who don't know the mythology, let me just briefly go over it. The mother of the gods, otherwise known as Cybele or Rhea, fell in love with Attis, who was a shepherd boy in Phrygia, which is now southeastern Turkey. And Cybele made Attis promise that he would love her alone and remain faithful to her. And Attis did promise this. But as things happen, he fell in love with a local nymph, or a local nymph fell in love with him. Or in other versions, he falls in love with the local princess and is betrothed to her. But during the wedding, Cybele, in a fit of rage, drives Attis mad. Attis runs out of the wedding ceremony, wailing madly, and sits down at the base of a pine tree, where he proceeds to take out a knife or a potsherd, and he unmans himself. That is, he removes his testicles as well as his penis, apparently, in an entire removal of his manhood. And Attis then bleeds to death under the pine tree. Cybele then proceeds to preserve his manhood in a box which she puts in the cellar of her temple. That is the story in brief of the suffering god Attis. And the question is, what does the Nicene preacher make of it? Well, the mother of the gods he describes as the one who castrates Attis. That's interesting. It might be based on a variant in which the mother of the gods herself cuts off Attis's penis and testicles, but it might also just be a kind of telescoped version of the story in which Cybele drives him mad and he does the deed himself. Cybele is a jealous deity and she wants to possess Attis as her beloved. The penis and testicles, according to the Nicene preacher, represent the male power. And it's the male power that he transfers from the body to the soul. The male power, in other words, is the human essence. Now, this seems to be a patriarchal reading because the male power, if it's male, really doesn't code as the human essence. But in antiquity, it's important to recognize that they were working with a patriarchal symbology. They used patriarchal symbols, and we really can't avoid talking about those. Male power is not biologically male. Maleness itself is symbolic of power, of spirit, of mind, of consciousness. And it is this spirit or mind or consciousness that the Nicene author identifies with the true self of human beings. So he doesn't read the Attis myth as some kind of faded memory of what happened in the past when two lovers clashed and a man lost his testicles. That's not the meaning of the story. The meaning of the story for the Naassenes preacher is allegorical. He raises it to a spiritual level. None of these events really happened, but they represent God drawing up the male power of the soul, that is, drawing up the human essence, the real and true human within, and bringing it up to the supercosmic realm, the realm of pure being, away from this realm of matter, of flesh, and of other sorts of bodily substances. It is a utopian allegorical reading in which the true human exits this world. And it is on the basis of this allegory that the Naassenes preacher feels able then to identify Attis as a manifestation of Jesus. For it is Jesus who is the great example of the true and pure human being who is able to transcend the flesh and rise to heaven as pure spirit. Perhaps the greatest image of the redemption of Attis is this plate of silver called the Parabiago platter, and it depicts Attis in a cosmic setting. We can't exactly see everything here, but obviously in the center we have Attis, who is in a chariot or chariot throne sitting next to Cybele, the mother of the gods, drawn by four lions who seem to be coursing through the air. The plate can be dated anytime between the 2nd century and the 5th century. Attis and Cybele are surrounded by three Corybantes who are clashing their swords against their shields. But in the larger cosmic setting, we see representations of the moon, we see representations of the sun. This is a cosmic setting. And we also see time and the seasons represented on the plate. So when does this event occur? Well, it doesn't occur before Attis's castration. It must occur after it. It was widely viewed in antiquity that Attis had achieved a kind of astral immortality after his death. So the real Attis, the castrated Attis, was still alive, but he had become a cosmic being and had been deified so that he could spend his blessed life with the mother of the gods, who was herself immortal. If we continue the quote from the Refutation, which is itself here paraphrasing the Nicene Discourse, we read in 5.7.15 that, quote, Attis is cut off from the earthly parts of creation down here and is crossed to the eternal reality above, where there is neither male nor female, but a new creation, a new human being, which is androgynous, unquote. So we do have a reading of the story of Attis that continues to use patriarchal symbols. But interestingly enough, when you look at the core content of the allegory, the point for the Nicene preacher, the point of redemption, the point of salvation, is not that a human being becomes male, but that a human being becomes androgynous, that is, male, female. The new creation, the new human being that we become is both male and female. It transcends the flesh, and therefore it transcends the divisions of the flesh, so that true redemption is recognizing both that humans are both genders. Now, what's slightly confusing about this reading is that the Nicene preacher seems to say at one and the same time that the true human transcends gender, but is dual gendered. And this is an ambiguity in Nicene theology, which we just have to deal with. According to the Nicene preacher, the human, who is the manifestation of God to this world, is both male and female, but also transcends it. I'm not going to try to explain exactly how that works. I don't know myself, but It's a both and kind of situation. The Nicene preacher also allegorizes the male power of the soul or the higher consciousness as a mustard seed, as the kingdom of heaven within us, and as an indivisible point. He also calls it the pearl. He's got a variety of metaphors for referring to that same inner essence, that true human within, the true self, as it were. And whether he's using images from farming or from mathematics or from mythology or from whatever domain, he's talking about that same thing, which he calls the new creation, the new human within. This is what is redeemed. This is what transcends all matter. This is what enters the kingdom of heaven as an incorporeal entity, fully alive and fully deathless. Perhaps the most predominant image for the new human being, or at least the one that's used most thoroughly, is the image of the seed. We are all seeds of the Son, of the human, and our life in this world is the life in which the seed grows. But as in Plato's Timaeus, we are all plants with our roots not in earth, but in heaven. We are nourished with the heavenly juices, the heavenly energies, not from water and nutrients on earth, but from the life giving spring and nutrients that come from heaven and our contemplation of heaven. As you can see, the Nicene preacher is a Platonist, and in some cases, even more Platonist than the Platonists were. But the point here is that this is a highly utopian version of salvation. It is about exiting this world. Whatever you call it, seed, pearl, mustard seed, new creation, inner human, male power, this is the essence that grows into transcendence and grows out of this world. So it's when you become bodiless, when you lose your anatomical maleness or femaleness, that you enter into the state of redemption. Again, interestingly enough, the way the preacher describes this is that even in your transcendent noetic state, even when you exist as a light, a pure light of consciousness, you still are in some way male and female, but the maleness is true maleness and the femaleness is true femaleness. It isn't the kind that is determined by anatomy. It has nothing to do with anatomy. It is a spiritual reality. That's why even in the spirit world, we retain our maleness and femaleness, or rather, we fully realize our maleness and femaleness held mutually together at one and the same time in the upper world forever. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have benefited, leave me a like and a comment. I know that in the modern world, we are very, very far from Platonism. And so some of the concepts in this video might be new to you and unfamiliar to you. If you're interested in this topic, I encourage you to go and take a look at my new book on the Naassenes. And if you want to have a conversation, please join me on Patreon. To all of you, thank you again and take care.